Have you ever randomly remembered a car from perhaps your childhood and thought, did I dream that, or did that car really exist? Well, let's refresh your memory. So today we're going to talk about 15 cars from the last 30 years or so that you just don't see anymore for whatever reason. And most of these, they didn't make very many of them. And these aren't really bad cars. They just never caught on for whatever reason. I'll touch on each 15 of them, give you a little brief history about them, how many they made, and just a little bit about their power plant. And I want to get right into this video because it could be really long, so we'll just get right into it. And honestly, I had a lot of fun putting this together. And there's about 3 of these I totally forgot about doing research for this video. I was like, oh yeah, that was a thing. That car was pretty cool. So these are in an order. We'll start at 15 and go to 1. 1 being the most, like, I can't believe they made that, and I forgot they made that. But all these are pretty unique in their way. Most of these you never see. I think 2 of these I've never even seen in person, but they were just a normal production car, nothing crazy about them. So with that being said, here we go, number 15, and we'll go to number 1. The Subaru SVX. It always reminds me of the SUX from RoboCop, that spoof type car. But no, the SVX, it looks very sporty. It looks way ahead of its time. I think I've seen 2 of these in my lifetime. Doug DeMira has a really good video on this car if you're curious. But yeah, you just don't see them. And then doing research on this, I found out why they failed. And the reason's very interesting. So if you know Subaru, they're all about their manual transmissions. This car was never offered in a manual. Doesn't that seem criminal? Subaru stated at the time in the early 90s, they made these from 91 to 96, that they simply didn't have a beefy enough transmission to take on the stout 231 horsepower motor out of a 6-cylinder, flat 6, a post-pinion boxer type engine. I believe they only use this in this car ever. It was a huge displacement motor for the time, but the big Achilles heel for this car was simply the lack of a manual transmission. But yeah, long story short, Subaru's never been known for their automatic transmissions, especially in the 90s. They made about 25,000 of these guys worldwide. It's probably 1,000 left if I had to guess. But yeah, lack of a manual and the automatic transmission issues just wasn't enough to keep it afloat, so Subaru gave it the old axe. Cool looking car though, and has a really weird window. It's like 2 windows and 1 on the driver door. If you ever seen one, you know what I'm talking about. All right, number 14, Cadillac ELR. Very weird car. I saw a handful of these about 10 years ago. You don't see them at all anymore. They made just 3,000 of these. Yeah, so sort of a clone of the Chevy Volt, but the upscale Cadillac version, but they made it worse. It used a little iron block 1.3 gasoline motor paired to a little electric motor that gave you range of about 35, 37 miles with some decent horsepower, but after that 30 miles, you're on your gasoline engine, which had about 80 horsepower, which is very uninspiring. But the biggest reason why this car was a failure and never really took off was the price point. These things started at the mid-70s, 10 years ago. That's like $90,000 now for a tiny little compact luxury car. It just made no sense. They look okay. It just begs the question of why. Who is this for exactly? I just don't know. Even a used one, a really good deal, I wouldn't want one because it's not practical. It's just kind of strange. All right, number 13. And before I say this, I want you to really think about the last time you saw one of these. That's the 2nd generation Ford Probe / Mazda MX-6. My dad bought one of these in 1993 as the end of the year leftovers. It was a very entry-level Probe, not the GT. I think it was the SE. I think there was 3 different trims, like a base, like an ST, SE, and then a GT. But yeah, I remember thinking how cool that car looked. I want to say my dad paid like $11,000 for it, brand new, back in 93. Which is, I guess, kind of a lot. That's like, what, $22,000 in today's money? Which I guess isn't too much. But yeah, I can't remember the last time I saw a Ford Probe on the road. Think about it if you need to. It's been a while for me. Now, they made this in 2 different power plants. You had a very basic 4-cylinder that made about 112 horsepower. I guess you heard that right, 112 horsepower. And there was a little V6 with like 155 horsepower for the GT. Both very uninspiring. As far as performance, they look cool. The GT looked really nice, honestly, but it was just so damn plasticky. Everything was just plastic, and it was a spruced up econo box, in my opinion. That's all it was. that just happened to be a sports car or looked like a sports car. And the funny part was in '93, the Ford Probe was actually supposed to replace the Mustang, like indefinitely. The Mustang was going to go away and the Ford Probe was going to take over. But a lot of protests and pushback from Ford fanboys, and I'm glad they did that, because the Ford Probe after '97 is no more. And here we are in 2024 with a 2025 model year Mustang, still with a manual transmission, still a V8. So I'm glad a Mustang won that war. But yeah, Ford Probe GT, you just never see them. I think a couple months ago at Auto Trader, I looked for a couple. I think there's like 2 for sale across the whole country. So yeah, it was just cheaply made little Ford product. All right, number 12, the Mini Cooper Coupe. If you're not familiar with this, it's pretty much a Mini Cooper hardtop. And they just chopped the roof line a little bit and made it a 2-seater. Now, a Mini Cooper is already very small in 2-door form, but they took that and made it even more impractical and made it look kind of goofy. Honestly, I don't mind the look of it. It's interesting. These came in both a convertible and a hardtop. The hardtop, it just looks unfinished. Like they started doing it and they got like 85% done and they didn't really know how to finish it. Like put a little thing right there. Yeah, I'll call it good. It's just interesting. They made them for what? 4 years, 2011 to 2015. You get this in a base trim, an S model, and a JCW. Again, if you're a single dude or a single chick, you don't have a family, it could work as your only car. It's just not very practical where it's already super tiny. I'd rather just have a regular hardtop Mini, and I do. But yeah, kind of a weird situation. I'm curious some of your thoughts on the Mini Cooper Coupe. I never really hear about them, and I might see one once every 6 months or so. All right, number 11. This is a car that it's kind of my guilty pleasure car. I've done a video on this car in the past. That's the Chrysler Crossfire. But to be more specific, in 2005 they made a supercharged version of the Crossfire, and it's very unique because it's just a 1-year car. They didn't make very many of them. It's based on the Mercedes SLK platform. This car is very divisive. You either hate it or you love it. I remember years ago, Top Gear did like a hit piece on this car and made people really hate it. Even after seeing that, even I was like, I still like the car. I love the way it looks from the rear end. I think it just looks good. I think whoever designed it did a good job. You don't see it very often. Reliability is questionable, but I think they look neat. And I wouldn't mind owning one day, especially an SRT. Now, they never made the SRT in a manual, just an automatic, but that was an AMG thing. Mercedes never makes their super high-end cars in a manual. They just don't. And that carried over to the Chrysler Crossfire SRT6. But the SRT6, or Crossfire in general, cool little car. You just don't see very many of them. And they made them for about, 6 model years, if I'm not mistaken. They weren't terribly expensive. People just didn't like them. They just didn't take off. Kind of underpowered. They got a little V6, I think like 215, 230 horsepower. The supercharged one had like 325 horsepower, pretty stout. But yeah, it's too bad they didn't take off. It's a cool little platform. I get it. It was based on an SLK platform, which wasn't very popular. But I'm just shocked that Chrysler folk didn't really care for them. I'm not really a Chrysler guy. Even I really appreciated them. I still do. All right, number 10. This one's interesting. This could be like 3 cars in one, but I just made it 1 car. That's the Saturn ION Red Line. But the Red Line series had the View, the Sky, and the ION. The View is just kind of a body kit on the SUV, and I believe that came in a manual, which is kind of interesting. The Sky I actually don't mind. Same as the Pontiac Solstice. I don't think I ever owned one, but I appreciate them. They're pretty quick for what they were. I have driven a Pontiac Solstice in base form. It was a fun little car. Can you imagine that in the Red Line? That'd be pretty fun. And then you had the ION, which wasn't man, I don't know. I guess it was Saturn's answer to the Dodge SRT4 Neon, which is a really cool car. I love those. I've had one of those many years ago. But those things get a lot of press. That's not on this list, the SRT4. But the ION Red Line, you just don't see very much. It had very unique clamshell doors in all trims, not just the Red Line. To me, what killed it was just cheap parts and laziness. The interior especially, they put the center stack with the gauges right in the middle to make that easier for right-hand drive countries. And to me, I don't like that. I get what they're trying to do to cut down cost, but I don't like looking, in my center stack to see how fast I'm going. These were also had a blower on it, but not a turbo. These had a supercharger, a little less horsepower than the SRT4. Reliability was questionable in these guys, kind of chintzy looking. I mean, it was a Saturn after all. But yeah, you just never see them. I can't remember last time I saw any red line from Saturn, or a Saturn in general. You just never see them anymore. I mean, geez, Saturn's been gone, what, 15 years now, I think? Yeah, plus they only made 5,800 of those guys in the red line trims. I've probably 500 left in the wild, if I had to guess. All right, number 9, Eagle. Yes, the brand Eagle. Remember Eagle? But more specifically, the Eagle Talon, which was the twin to the second generation Eclipse. I always preferred the Eclipse over the Talon. I never understood why the Eagle was a thing. They just kind of took cars from Dodge and Mitsubishi. They're all kind of one and the same for a while there, and just kind of made their own thing. Yeah, so they made the Eagle Talon from 95 to 98. It shared all the internals and almost identical interior as the Eclipse from the same generation. Same power plant, the 2.0. You get an all-wheel drive and the turbo, of course, most desirable being the all-wheel drive turbo. They made quite a bit of these. For the 4-year run, they made about 55,000 of these. However, the ones you want, the desirable turbo all-wheel drive, they made about, under 10,000s, but you never see them. I never see an Eclipse anymore, second generation, let alone an Eagle. It's quite rare. But yeah, I always thought Eagle was kind of strange what their goal was, who their market was. But obviously it didn't work because they're not around anymore. All right, number 8. This is also a video I did a couple years ago, 3 years ago. And actually one of the most hated videos I did. People hate this video, the real diehards of this car. That is the Ford Thunderbird Super Coupe. Made from 89 to 95. My very first car was an 89 Super Coupe. It was a fine car. It's a little luxury performance thing. And I think the way I described it, I'm more of a GM guy now, but there was a brief time where I did like Ford and the Super Coupe. And I did that video off the cuff, not much research. I went off just remembering about the car, and it's mostly bad stuff. And people really took that to heart, man. So if you're curious, watch that video. I'm curious to know what you guys think of that video. But no, so yeah, they made these cars for 6 years. In basic Thunderbird form, they were garbage. The 3.8 and the 5.0 they had, I'm sorry, the 5.0 and then the 4.6, they were meh. They were very floaty, heavy cars. But in the Super Coupe form, you know, you got to refine suspension, manual transmission, beefier brakes. It took the 3.8 V6, which is already known for head gaskets. You put a blower on it, and about 8,000 miles, typically the head gasket would fail in these. That's why you don't see them very much today, just unless you were on top of it, proactive, and fortified the heads. These things just blew up. They ate themselves up. It is what it is. But these things drove very nice. I mean, the throws were very long. 5-speed. They sound really cool. The blower sounded really cool. The whine was really, really, really unique. If I ever came across a decent example, 94, 95, with some headwork done, I might pick one up, you know, for under $6,000 or $7,000. But you never see them anymore. You just don't see them. I think I saw a white 90-ish Super Coupe about a year ago at Lowe's. Like, man, that's pretty cool. No one else knew what I was talking about, but I don't know. I like them. They're cool. And their silhouette looked very NASCAR-like. It's one of the only cars that looked just like the NASCAR, which I thought was pretty cool. All right, number 7. This is also a car I've done a video on before, and this is a car I love the body style. If this had a different power plant, I would own one. I would go turn my C8 in right now, and that's the Cadillac XLR. If this thing didn't come with a North Star over-engineered motor, I appreciate what they tried to do, but in practice, it just didn't work that well. If these things came with like an LS2 or LS3, these things would be freaking phenomenal. Paired with a 6-speed manual, oh my God, this car would be great. This thing was an OG hardtop convertible, which is huge for, almost 20 years ago. But yeah, the North Star motor just made them not very desirable. Ironically enough, the supercharged version of the North Star is more reliable than the NA. I don't know why, it just is. But worldwide, they sold about 15,000 of these guys. Like I said, whoever was in charge of Cadillac or GM at the time, man, that was a swing and a miss. That was a softball, just underhand, to knock out of the park, so close. But I'd love to see them take the C8 platform and bring the XLR back. That'd be cool. That'd be a good video by itself, just talking about that. But yeah, I'd love to see what they could do with the C8 platform, make it even more exotic. That'd be pretty cool. All right, number 6. Yes, Volvo, for a brief time, made fun little sports cars, even in manual. Volvo S60R. If you've ever heard of this, it's a pretty cool little car. It had about 300 horsepower and it had all-wheel drive. They made these guys for 4 model years from 04 to 07, unfortunately. And you can really tell them apart from the base S60. It had a little body kit on it, Brembo brakes up front, different wheels, manual transmission. The gauge cluster in this car is really cool. It's like nothing I've ever seen before. And I can't believe it's a Volvo. It's like a emerald blue, like a dark, and it's just not emerald blue. It's like a navy blue, but it's shiny. There'll be a graphic right here, but I've never driven one of these. Drive one. I've driven a Volvo before, but not an S60 before. R, that is. But yeah, they didn't last too long. No one really knew about them. I didn't know about them until years later. You know what I mean? It didn't advertise them that well. Unless you were like a Volvo fanboy, you didn't know what an S60R was. I mean, shit, I didn't know until probably 2014 it was even a thing. So it's just their marketing department. It's not really good at marketing their hot rods to younger guys, I guess. In any case, yeah, I haven't seen one of those in probably, 8-9 years. All right, number 5, an Isuzu VehiCROSS. I think I'm saying that right. This was a very contemporary car for its time, just produced from 99 to 2001. These things were like a sports car, jacked up, with the underpinnings of a Isuzu Trooper. I don't know much about these cars. They only sent about 4,100 of these things to the US. That's it. These things are super rare. Outside of one other car on this list, I think it's the most rare car. I don't think I've ever seen one. If you look at it, like, whoa, it looks like it was a concept, and then the powers that be, the execs were like, yeah, full send, just make it. Like, no adjustments at all. It almost looks fake. I really can't believe they made them, but they did. Obviously, they weren't too popular. They only lasted 2 years, but you never really hear about them. I've never seen one, and I don't know if they're real. I see pictures of them, but did this really happen, or did I dream this whole thing? But yeah, they were offered 2-door only, 4-wheel drive, same power plant as the Isuzu Trooper. That's all I got to say about it. Very interesting car. All right, number 4, the General Motors EV1 from 1997 to 1999. Yes, GM in the 90s made an exclusively all-electric car for 3 model years. They made about 1,000 of these guys. They didn't sell them. They only leased them, and there's a reason for that. I'll get to in a second. So the first 2 years, I guess the first year was just a basic lead acid battery, super heavy, good for about 80 miles of range, but after about a year, they're good for about 60. The batteries, unlike lithium now, this didn't hold a charge like they did. And then by 99, they had a nickel type battery, which was good for 140 mile range. But the owners, the early adopters, if you will, that bought these things first, honestly really liked them. About 2003, when all the leases started coming up, 2002 I guess it was, GM wanted nothing to do with this project. And even the people that own these things, they sent letters to GM saying, hey, I want to keep it. I like this little car, and I'll pay future expenses. I'll work on it myself. And GM said, no, we want them all back. GM went out and rounded up every single VIN, destroyed almost all of them. There are still a few left in museums, but for whatever reason, early 2000s, GM washed their hands of electric altogether. A little project they did, they tried it. It wasn't terribly unsuccessful, but for whatever reason, they just did not like it. So yeah, all the owners had to give them all back. They destroyed them. They kept a few in museums, and that's it. GM doesn't really talk about it. Kind of a weird time, but yeah, it was a real thing. Look it up, I'm serious. GM EV1, the first electric car 25 years ago. Crazy, right? Number 3, this is a car that I wouldn't say I fantasized about, but I was like, man, if I ever make it in life, I'm gonna own one of these. And that's the Plymouth/Chrysler Prowler. Remember those? It's flagship color with purple. How cool is that? Man, I had so many models of this thing and put them together and posters in my wall. I would have been, oh man, 12, 13 at the time this thing came out. But it looked like nothing else on the road because it was like nothing else on the road. However, terribly underpowered, terrible power plant. Didn't sound good at all. Slow, the dimension was slow. The interior was abysmal. Very Chrysler at the time, but it looked cool. Just standing still, it looked cool. It had a lot of weird government regulation bumpers on and stuff just because it needed to, you know. But very neat, very contemporary, and Dodge just went for it at the time. I guess Chrysler, very innovative. I'll give it to Dodge. They've always been a company until recently to just go for it. They've always just went for it. And that was another example. The Viper 2 and all the SRT and the Hellcat shit now. Stellantis is destroying all that, but I've always liked Dodge because of that. Because they're just like, fuck it, we're going to do it, and just fucking did it. I love that about them. And the Prowler is no exception. You don't see them very often. There's still quite a few for sale. I don't know if I'd buy one. I don't know, they're working on the damn things, but they look cool. You can get one for 20 something. They're not terribly expensive. It's all relative what you're willing to pay for it. But yeah, it was cool. They only made 11,000 of them over their 5 or so year run. But yeah, they just had a little V6. I think it was the same power plant and everything else they put at the time, from like a minivan to the Dodge Stratus, which is unfortunate. But yeah, it was cool. They went for it, and I can appreciate that. All right, number 2. This is a car. Well, so, okay, let me start here. In the 90s, a car I absolutely loved was the Mitsubishi 3000 GT. In the 90s, Mitsubishi was doing everything right. From TVs, the cars, you name it. Not so much anymore. But for whatever reason, Dodge and Mitsubishi at the time were very close, and so Dodge was like, hey, we want to make the same car. And Mitsubishi's like, okay. So they took a 3000 GT and made a Dodge Stealth. Remember the Stealth? You never see them. The identical underpinnings of a 3000 GT. The same power plants. You had the single overhead cam V6, the dual overhead cam V6, and the turbo overhead cam double V6. But yeah, the interior was the same, mechanics was the same, just the exterior Dodgeified it. And they made about, 65,000 of these, but only 10,000 of these were the desirable V6 turbo models. But with that being said, you don't see them. I haven't seen a Dodge Stealth in probably 6 years, man. I mean, the same reliability as, I guess, a Mitsubishi at the time, but you don't see any of those either, unfortunately. But yeah, those were a thing. That was peak Dodge, in my opinion. Mid to late 90s, and Mitsubishi too. They kind of peaked then. More so Mitsubishi. Now they're just a shell of what they were. They make, what, a Mirage now and an Eclipse SUV. I don't get it. All right, before we get to number 1, here's 3 quick honorable mentions. Mercury Marauder. Looks cool. It's just a Crown Vic, let's be honest. Subaru Baja. You never see them. I would have put it on the list. I just ran out of room at a time. And then the Pontiac Aztec, which I feel like has got a huge cult following since it came out, especially Breaking Bad made it really, really popular. So I didn't put it on the list because everyone knows about it, you know what I mean? So with that being said, number 1. The number 1 car, I forget was actually a thing. And I'm still shocked they made it. And I don't know why they made it or who they made it for. It looks cool. That's the Chevy SSR. Yeah, that really happened. They announced it in 2002, and from 03 to 06, they made a sports car pickup truck that no one asked for and no one could ever really use because it wasn't really big enough to use as a proper pickup, and you didn't want to hurt it because it looked like a sports car. It only had 2 seats, limited storage in the cabin, that is. And they used the Vortec 5.3 iron block for the first year. So it was like, are we making a truck or a sports car? I don't know what they're trying to do. Now, don't get me wrong, it looks cool. It's based off a late 40s, early 50s Chevy pickup. I really can appreciate the styling, but it was relatively expensive. I want to say $42,000 in 02, 03, which is like $60,000 today money. But yeah, it's just like, who wanted that? Who asked for it? I don't know. And obviously not a lot of people because it's not around anymore. But yeah, so the first couple of years was the 5.3 iron block. And they went to the LS2 with the manual, which if you were to get one, definitely get a later model one. And yeah, they made about 24,000 of these guys total. There's still quite a few left, Auto Trader. People that own these things, right, take really good care of them. But yeah, I never understood the segments or who it was made for. But again, I always appreciate them. They're kind of neat. I wouldn't own one, I don't think, but they're pretty cool. In any case, this video is kind of dragging on, but that's my list. 15 cars that people kind of forget about. I'm curious to know your thoughts on this and what I forgot below. I'm not against doing another video in the future if you guys give me some more good ideas. But yeah, at least 3 of these while making this list, I was like, oh yeah, I forgot about that car. Especially Ford Pro, man. And even though our family had one as a kid, I was like, oh yeah, I forgot those exist. You never see the damn things. So that and the MX-6, which is the twin version of the Ford Pro. So cool. That's all I got for today, guys. Hope you guys enjoyed this. I'll see you guys Sunday, Monday for a C5 Z06 video. But until then, you guys take care and have a good weekend. Mark.